Okay. Yep, it's recording.
I got it. Oops, I
And
got
should
it.
we also do
I'm gonna
start the recording? And I forget how we start a text of the meeting as well,
captions.
captions on.
No, you go down under,
I'm looking at it.
chat, and you go to
No.
the edge of it, the three little dots, and say save the chat.
No, that's not what he's saying. He wants closed captions.
Oh,
There we go.
Have you
That
got
way
it?
we have a written record of what we're doing as well, which
How'd you
may or
turn it
may
on?
not help you, Michelle.
so does that mean you get at the end of the night a printed transcript?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, very helpful.
It is really helpful.
Francis is not coming tonight, and I just took a picture of the screen that I will text her to show her
Okay.
who's here.
And did you catch Dan as well?
Yep, there's 6 people here.
Okay,
Okay.
good deal.
Dan's here now.
Sorry, everyone.
Okay.
Took me a bit.
That's all right. We've just sort of been talking around. So why don't we bring the meeting to order? And as always, we start with agenda adjustments and announcements. Does anyone want to propose an agenda adjustment? Okay.
My only, well, Brenda does have a question. Can I?
Yes, go.
We don't need to do anything with the amendment that's getting proposed on to the city council that's coming up, right? That piece, we all got things in the mail. It's the
Greenway?
the Greenway proposal that we don't need to address that at all, correct?
We could talk about it, and I think it's probably a good idea. Thanks for bringing it up, Brenda. How about once we discuss the consent calendar, why don't we add that as an agenda item?
Okay.
Good, thank you. Anything else? Let me throw that in so I don't forget it. Okay, I hope you saw at the end of the agenda, the announcement that the county the budget committee has tentatively approved funding for our outreach budget to cover that the city doesn't cover, to the tune of 70% of our previous allocation. 70% because the city is proposing to reduce our outreach budget by 30%. So I thought it was logical, check with Dan to ask for an equivalent amount. It is possible the county or the city will increase that funding, but I'm kind of doubtful. They're proposing several, that they have a $15 million shortfall this year. And Uchi recommended a decrease in the outreach budget because 70% is approximately the amount of money that is utilized by all the neighborhoods for whatever reason. So
John, I'm confused because you're talking about item number 7, I think.
no,
You're talking about an announcement and telling me that that affects item number 7.
no, it doesn't. That's the money we have for this calendar year, not next calendar year. So they're both outreach money, but what we got from the county budget committee is potentially an allocation for fiscal year 23-24. What we need to look at now is what we would spend in fiscal year 22-23. Does that clarify?
So what you were talking about has nothing to do with what's on the agenda.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, other than they're both pots of money, they're just different pots.
Well, as someone who's trying to make sense of what I'm reading, that was confusing, but.
Okay, sorry. Any other announcements? Claire?
Yeah, the city did this big survey of to help inform neighborhood associations of how the public thinks of us. And so we disaggregated the data for River Road. And I did a preliminary analysis of that and wrote up a 7-page document. And that I emailed y'all a link to that. I think that the next thing we need to do with that document is it's kind of the formatting is rough. And so it needs to be proofread and the formatting fixed, and I need to volunteer for that. And secondly, I would like for people to read through it and see if there's any summary or comments or recommendations that we would put in a executive summary.
So thank you for doing that, Claire. I thought it was really helpful. I did get a chance to look at it.
Great.
And so are you suggesting that rather than a 7-page document that we take the information in here and reduce it down to a digestible amount?
Well, usually you put an executive summary in the front in case, so people can read that. And then if they want more information, they can read the rest.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you need done with the document that you sent to us?
I need it to be copy edited and made for consistent formatting. The tables are a little bit inconsistent.
Okay.
I was trying to get it out the door and didn't want to. I hate screwing around with tables.
I must not have read far enough. I don't remember seeing tables. I just saw your descriptions.
Well, that was page 1.
What's your timeline?
I don't
Yeah.
think it's urgent. I think we can talk about it next month.
Okay, because I could take a stab at it, but I can't do it for the next couple of weeks.
Well, if people are okay with reading the draft as is, to think about it, then we can pretty it up and discuss it next month.
Yeah, and I'm also curious to remember how many actually people, I mean, I remember being struck by that at the meeting when they were sharing this. How many people live in our neighborhood versus how many people actually responded to this?
Okay, well, make a note in the document that the overview should comment on that. I did comment there was 50 people 49 people responded, and that it's not generalizable to anything.
Yep.
But it'd probably be a good idea to say how many people in the neighborhood is along with that.
And that's the constant problem is no matter what the issue is, very few people engage, including our neighborhood plan feedback, I'm afraid.
So before we go on, John, I just want to know if there's agreement for people to follow up on my request. Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, I agreed. I think it's
you, Beth.
worth reviewing it as a board as well, and maybe even presenting to the membership.
Well, I was thinking it should be published as a link in the newsletter.
Yeah.
Should-
Agreed. For those of us that were at the all neighborhood meeting about a month ago, there was a bit of discussion about whether or not the results of the survey indicated that people saw neighborhoods as being NIMBY. And we were talking earlier, Claire and I, and neither she nor I perceive anything in ours that indicated a pushback on NIMBYism or a pushback thereof. So that's good to hear. I don't know if the issue is a real one and whether it's just in some neighborhoods, but it doesn't appear to be an issue here. You mentioned, Claire, that there was homelessness as an issue was raised, but from both perspectives.
Yeah.
And certainly it's not illogical to see homelessness as an issue.
John, if our agenda was as packed as I think it is, we need to not talk about announcements and get onto the agenda because you're putting this on a later board meeting, you said.
Okay. So in that vein, the next item on the agenda is to approve the consent calendar. I would like to pull the April 17th board meeting from the consent calendar just because I haven't had a chance to read it. Sorry, Michelle.
That's okay. I was late getting it to you. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I usually don't let it sit that long because you'll lose some stuff. So
understood. Well, thank you for doing it nonetheless. Does anyone else have any objections to approving the other three agenda?
Don, just as a point of correction, I thought at the last meeting we approved the March 20th.
Yeah,
I believe maybe we did. I thought I had pulled them because people had said they hadn't had a chance to read them. So just to be doubly sure, can we approve these three now and put them to bed for certain?
I would second it.
So who made the motion?
It's on the
Done.
agenda.
Pardon?
I'm chairing, so I
Oh.
theoretically can't make motions. So Brenda, you made the motion and we need a second?
Oh, I thought if it's on the agenda, it was motioned. Sure, I'll make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay. So Brenda made, Claire seconded. All those in favor, raise your hands either electronically or by hand on the
Simpler
screen.
this way.
Aye.
Thanks,
Okay,
Dan.
we're good.
6,
Thank you.
4.
And thank you, Michelle. Your minutes are excellent.
Thank
They
you.
are.
There may be even a little too much effort put into it. If you feel impressed.
It's
Okay,
appreciated.
Well, I mean, I know I have seen seen others before that are like way too much
Yeah.
information.
Right,
I mean, I can do it just based on this was what was discussed and this is what was decided and leave it at that, if that's what
Yeah.
you guys want.
Yeah,
Some of the
that's
things
good
I
enough.
put in there for follow-up to make sure we don't drop the ball. And
Yeah,
that's
follow-up's good.
just from my previous experience that things will get dropped if you don't keep
Yeah,
track.
Absolutely.
probably helpful when the request for agenda items come out. It might be helpful if you have an awareness of what those are, if you quick copy them and put them in an email to John. Since he didn't read it, if you put something in, he wouldn't have seen them.
Okay,
right. Now, well, it wasn't available when I sent it out.
right. And
Nonetheless,
the other thing is sometimes what I used to do at ODOT was I would leave those unfinished pieces of business on the bottom of the agenda, those action items. So they stayed on.
that'd be a
there.
great idea.
Yeah.
So until they got discussed or resolved or whatever, there was a running list always at the end of the agenda of unfinished action items.
But
Yeah.
you don't start the agenda. John does.
Right, but I can put on the agenda, I can send it John what's unfinished off of a list and he can copy and paste it onto the agenda.
Yeah.
Right.
Very good. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Sure.
Item number 3, review previous general meeting. And in this, the May 8th meeting was held in person at the annex without a Zoom option because of the subject matter being difficult to do via Zoom. And Brenda had mentioned in her agenda items, I'm looking forward to how the in-person meeting went and what kind of interactions people enjoyed last week. So with that, what do people think? How did the meeting go?
Anybody there?
Crickets?
We did have approximately 40 people based on my recollection who were there. We had several new people. They found it very difficult to engage in the neighborhood plan, no surprise there. There's several staff people and some people from Santa Clara to help as subject matter experts. It was a bit disjointed, but I thought the information got exchanged and questions were raised and answered to some degree. Michelle?
My only concern was, I was at the transportation table. So I didn't hear what was going on with everybody else. And so I don't want to, I was kind of in a silo. But I had the guy from Santa Clara felt like he had to facilitate for our neighborhood. And so there was some kind of, are you doing this? Or it was kind of
Okay.
unclear. And then we had one very sweet little old lady that came in that was just adamant about the bike bridge over Beltline and kind of hogged all the time. So I guess my only thing would be maybe some clear communication between everybody ahead of time that we're going to go help out Santa Clara. So when we're helping out Santa Clara, we're not the main facilitator. We're like the recorder backup or whatever. And then when they come over here to River Road, then the roles are reversed. Because I kind of felt like I was kind of in this power struggle with this guy. So,
Sorry about that.
I mean, it just kind of came about probably as a lack of communication to him, but he thought he was he was the facilitator of it.
Who was
and I thought
that?
I was.
John, who was that?
Yep.
Who was that?
I think it was Jerry, wasn't it? Finnegan?
No.
No.
Oh,
No.
I don't remember his name. I'm sorry.
Never mind, not important.
Was
And
it the
what
guy from the social justice team?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
No, and he was not a strong bike ped person. So I felt like there was the possibility of some misinformation getting out.
Mm.
yeah.
So that's my only thing, is that we probably need to do have a little bit of time for the facilitators or the folks to make clear what the expectations are. He just thought he was going to do it for both Santa Clara and River Road. And I thought it was the other way around. I thought we were switching off. So it was just a little confusing. And then this poor little lady in a
If I'm not mistaken,
yeah,
I believe that, I'm not mistaken, I believe that was part of the group that had like Timothy, Sutherland, Bratland, and Miss Walker that were there that day. I don't know. I mean, I just know that I saw them come in together, so I don't know if they were together, but it seems that sounds right. So I don't know if the election had something to kind of do with that. And of course, when you're talking about transportation, I was kind of keeping my ear a little bit open to see if we're going to kind of delve into the right and wrongs of EMX as opposed to the overall transportation. And we had, obviously Charlie showed up and he was very passionate about his thoughts on it. So yeah, so I think that that's probably where that came from. But hopefully over time we reduce our dependency on that one sole topic as part of the conversation.
My recollection, excuse me, Michelle, if I may, just a bit of clarity. I think I know who you're talking about as far as the mature lady who had the issues, because I think she brought them up in the prior part of the meeting as well. She has come to meetings before, and she tends to be locked in on one issue that's of personal interest to her. So I'm not surprised that didn't happen again. That was a problem at Santa Clara as well with the way we dealt with this. The neighborhood plan, we would hope to review at a 30,000 foot level, but people come with one issue and that's the only thing they want to talk about. And it's hard to steer them away from it.
It is. And I have had lots of experience with, people wanting to complain, facilitating a meeting, and they want to talk to you about the stop sign at the end of their street or curbs or guardrails or whatever by where, that affects them. I get that. People are concerned with what affects them personally.
Right.
So I don't know. I just sometimes, especially with transportation, I feel like we need to do a better job of educating the public about what the expectations for the future are.
Right.
There's people don't understand that, we're going to try and get you out of your car. We want you to do active transportation. We want you to take transit. We want it to be easy and convenient and everything. And we're working on that, but it's a long process. So it just feels like there's not, with some of these folks. I mean, I took a few minutes and sat down with her and said, this is what, they just have to do this. This is the way of the future. This is what they do. Well, she didn't like it, but she accepted it. And it just feels sometimes, and you probably feel that way with the planning stuff too. It gets kind of sticky that they don't understand why. But anyway, I don't want to take.
Yeah.
Are you the person who said that on the survey?
Who said what?
all that stuff you just said, somebody said almost the same thing in the survey.
Probably. It was probably.
Okay.
I really feel strongly about that, that people don't understand
Yeah,
about what the wave of transportation is for the future.
Right.
And what we're planning for. And they were talking about taking away on-street parking, and that's terrible, and all this stuff. And it's like, and there's people are speeding and they won't slow down, but you won't take away. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's very difficult to help people understand the complexities and the long time it takes to
Right.
do that kind of planning.
Right.
Well, we'll see how it goes, and we'll have some discussion about that maybe later in the agenda when we get to the neighborhood plan, which is next.
Well, wait, I haven't heard but from one person. I'm curious what other people thought, and then I want to tell you what I heard.
Okay.
My community. Yeah. Beth, were you there?
Yes.
Did it work for you?
Well, I think the real challenge always, whenever you're facilitating a group like that, is not to interject your own passions into the conversation, because you really want to leave it open-ended with the facts presented to people so that you can hear different perspectives. And so I think that'll be a challenge tomorrow night at North too, with facilitating those tables. And you'll have people that are, like Michelle was talking about, who are single-minded, and you've got to broaden the conversation, and also be very careful not to interject your own personal biases into the conversation, because that's not the role of a facilitator.
So who facilitated that? Is that were you all the facilitators? The board members
small
were the
groups had
facilitators?
different facilitators.
I facilitated land use, and I probably did interject my own perspective a little bit too much.
I was a recorder. I didn't facilitate a table.
Yeah.
But I know the temptation is
Yeah,
always
yeah.
there when you are facilitating, especially when you've been deeply involved in something, to present your bias. And it's sometimes difficult to step back from that so that you hear what other people are thinking as well.
I read through the plan, not word by word, but I looked it over. It looked to me, has it been cleaned up and made more easy to read, or am I just, because I've read it more often, it's beginning to make sense to me? I thought there were illustrations about category this, then category this, and that this, it just looked easier to understand than a year ago. Have they been working on it, John?
I think the differences that have occurred, the plan itself, I don't think has had significant change. There have been explanatory documents that have been added to the website that maybe help clarify some of those things for you.
Well, I was reading the plan. I just found it way too, really too long for somebody to read and digest, but it was organized in such a way. Now, someone who is a policy wonk and administrator by heart and brilliant, Frances, thought the meeting was wonderful. She felt really engaged, and
Good.
so that was her feedback. She didn't understand that it was a River Road Community Organization meeting, and said it wasn't just us that was there. So she didn't get that we were hosting it in order to look at a bigger picture, but that's neither here nor there. I thought transportation wasn't a part of the plan anymore. I thought that got jerked out.
No, it's there.
Well, that was my question, because I thought that everything was taken away from the plan by the city, and there were 2 or 3 sticking points, and that was going to be made clear and identify the sticking points, so there'd be deeper discussion on those. And maybe that's not where you wanted to go, John, but that's what you have communicated to me in the past. So I was wondering what happened to that
Well, that may be what Beth was talking about, in that I intended to talk about those sticking points in the discussion about land use. So,
Only about land use. Okay,
well, those are the sticking points. They're all land use
Right.
sticking points.
okay.
And we are starting to slip on time.
Okay, just for future reference, I think if we can take a few minutes to further frame each, table or each conversation, this is what we're trying to get to today. This is, there is this overview that the city did with slides and all this stuff, but I think it would be better to do it more specifically and directly to the point.
Well, that might be a piece of information we could talk about tomorrow night. Speaking of which, you're all aware that we're meeting at North Eugene High School, right?
I'm not coming. I have other commitments.
Same here.
Okay. Understood.
It's my anniversary.
Yay!
No.
That's a big commitment.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many folks show up. So,
So,
yes,
so this agenda item was that we were going to talk about this, but then we were going to talk about how we're going to get feedback on this and how that's supposed to get, what it is that SOC is doing. And my question was, why is our timeline a month behind theirs?
I'm totally confused.
Well, number
Number 4,
there's a
Right.
piece in the agenda, which I copied to my notes, that says SCCO intends to provide advance notice of their special meeting to their membership and provide blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Prior to their deliberation, their closed deliberation. And so one question was, what's the closed deliberation? And then
Okay.
they're going to post their recommendations and give them, meaning the community, time to overturn their recommendations.
Okay, let me try to go over it again. The way that the deliberation and recommendations are to work at the neighborhood and CAC level, the community advisory committee for the neighborhood plan,
Mhm.
is that the CAC declared the process closed for now, and they are now turning it over to the 2 neighborhood associations to deliberate and make a recommendation about the draft plan and the action plan, et cetera, to the CAC. The CAC is to take that information and deliberate on their recommendation to the planning commission.
Okay.
Okay, so the time for that to start happening is now. We had both neighborhood associations at this month's meeting had a presentation and an opportunity to ask questions. The city is collecting feedback from everybody who wants to give it through their Engage Eugene process. That closes June 5th. So the next step is, once we receive the summary of that information from the city, which should be somewhere around June 20th, then we theoretically should schedule a meeting for our board and SACO for their board to take that information and deliberate to a recommendation. The next step that SACO is going through, and I suggest we do as well, is they will present that information to their at their next general meeting as to what they are recommending. Have a discussion with the membership that's there, because both for their membership and our membership, they have an opportunity, if they wish, to amend or reverse whatever the board is suggesting.
So the board gets to have a closed session to talk about.
Close in that not that no one can attend and listen, but they cannot participate.
Okay.
It's a board meeting like every other.
And my question was, if the timeline is that they want that back as soon as possible, and SOC is having, they're getting ready so that they present to their board on the 1st of June, or to their larger group, the community, on the 1st of June, why it is that you're not having us even try to schedule something until practically until after our next meeting, so we wouldn't present anything till July. I
Well,
don't understand why we don't we don't meet immediately, so we put
So
something.
I
out.
screwed up. What I should have said is May 20th and before June 10th. My bad.
So what's May 20th?
May 20th is when we will get the information from the city. And I dyslexed again and pushed everything.
So
Forward a month.
have we gotten it? It's May 24th.
I'm totally confused here. So the place where I was wrong is they're going to present at their July meeting.
Okay, okay,
Right, rather than the June.
okay. That
That's
makes
where my
sense.
error was.
Okay, okay.
My bad.
That's all right. I just couldn't figure out why we were planning ourselves.
No,
to
I can
slow.
understand completely.
The real question is, what is it? I mean, we can't, you remember I've said before, we have gotten feedback when we've talked about this with the community before, that this plan is way overwhelming and people need a few talking points. Kind of like when we were doing the Greenway adaption, people were saying, just tell me the niches of it and let me know. So I totally think kind of what Beth was saying is we really need to have a most important point under each of the, there's like a goal and then there's 5 points and then there's another goal and there's 5 points and there's like 15 under each topic. We need 3 points under each of those 5 pieces and that's it. That's our summary. And someone who's a wonk.
You know what I
read. Go ahead.
What I find to be most helpful in the neighborhood plan is each of the 5 areas of study are on one page with basically what it is, the policy, blah, blah, blah. And I think if you point people to that rather than having them try to read the entire document, it begins to make some sense. I'm overwhelmed too by the entire document, and I joined the CAC late and got into this discussion late, but still, I think the entire document is overwhelming. I think the city often presents a lot of paperwork, and that can be confusing for people that haven't been involved in the conversation. But I think if we take, I've forgotten what page number those are on, but each of those 5 areas, transportation, community, blah, 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 are on a single page. And it gives some examples of an action item, I believe, for most of them. And to me, that's an easier sort of bucket to be able to consume at one time, as opposed to trying to go through the entire document. That's just my perception.
Is it
So-
even possible to pull out, 2 or 3 points rather than list them all? Because that's an editorial judgment. So I
But
don't
let
even
me-
know if that's possible.
Let me bring us back to our task. Our task is to tell the CAC what we, frankly, ideally, what we like, what we don't like, and what changes we would want to have happen. And you guys, I'm hearing you guys talking about not being cognizant of what the content of the plan is. So are we not ready to do that? I'll be honest with you. My intent is to provide feedback in that format to the city and send you a copy of what things I think are either missing or problematic, and for you guys to consider as to whether you think that's worth sending forward or not. Ideally, others would do the same thing, but is the issue that you guys don't understand it enough to know what is or isn't okay in the plan?
We were
And-
talking
and
about
John,
review by the general community.
Hold on, one at a time.
Yeah,
Let Beth respond.
yeah.
Excuse me,
let me-
I heard
let me-
Claire speaking first. Could you go first and then Beth?
I said our previous discussion was about making accessible to the general community. It wasn't about the board review.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when we do the meeting tomorrow night, to really focus on those one pagers.
Okay,
Rather than trying to go back all the way through the history of the plan and, all of that. I think
We
it's
don't
too
need that.
much for people that are coming and perhaps hearing all of this for the first time. I don't know, maybe people will be better informed than I think they might be, but again, that's just my perception. And I'm
So-
fine with whatever the group decides on.
okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize where we were in this discussion. That process is fairly well set. I can try to interject in the few minutes I have what you're suggesting, but I don't know how much of that I can do. But I hear what you're saying and I understand. And it is daunting. It's a huge document. It's 5 years worth of work all rolled into one document.
Right.
And it is very difficult to comprehend. So let me see what I can do to provide some sort of a summary in the little bit of time I have in the agenda and throw that out. So anything else on tomorrow? Dan, would you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of my feeling about it. I feel like that we've used this kind of phrase several different times, and I get why. The idea that we need to have some sort of version for folks. This is the first time they're seeing the document. At this point in the process, it's like joining a class that's, Econ 402 and having someone go, raise their hand and say, what does econ stand for, right? And it's like at this point, you need to come to the meeting somewhat prepared with the prerequisite knowledge to be able to engage. We can't spend of a 2-hour meeting, the first hour in every meeting having all right, so this is what the neighborhood plan is. Either you come prepared or you don't. I mean, we have to continue. We only have a finite amount of time to work through this stuff, and if folks don't come prepared, then that's frankly on them. That's my view. Part of, I think, some of the confusion that happens is we don't do a very good job of having an overview of what this neighborhood and other neighborhoods they're going to see fairly large amounts of growth are going to look like and what form that's going to take shape. And that is the motivating factor that's behind a lot of this plan. Right. I mean, for those who didn't listen to the planning commission meeting last night, you can go back and listen to that as well. I mean, we really talked about how, on River Road, for example, it's like a one lane city, right? I mean, like you don't have a ton of arteries, you have one, and everyone feeds into River Road. So all the businesses are on River Road, all of the shops are on there, all of the major traffic issues, and all the problems that we have are on that one little stretch of road. And so that's where all the consternation happens on height limits and zoning and transportation and all that stuff. So to talk initially about what does growth look like in the next 20 to 30 years, because it's been 30 years since we've updated this plan. It'll be 30 years before it's updated again. So between now and when our version of a group takes this up in 2053, what does River Road going to look like? Is going to have 6-story buildings? Is going to have 10-story buildings? Is going to have 80,000 more people? Where are those 80,000 people going to live? And I think that part of the problem is that we're hearing from folks who are really focused on preserving the culture, the nuance, the attitude, the feeling, the nuance of a neighborhood that won't be here in 30 years. So how do we preserve the things that will be? And that is a totally different lens that I think that would start the conversation off. Then I don't like someone building a house next to me. Well, there's we're growing at 1.5% a year. They're coming. There's nothing we can do about that. So now what do we do? That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and in the context, hang on just a minute, Claire. Part of the problem is that we had a 3-year hiatus where, other than the CAC, everybody turned their back on this plan, and what knowledge and understanding they had is probably mostly lost. And then we brought in a whole bunch of more people as well. To further on Dan's comment, and I'll make this quick, is it's trying to engage people in the last 100 yards of a marathon. And I don't know how we do that. Claire?
So in the agenda of the meeting tomorrow night, I was wondering, is the city going to do the overview in their PowerPoint and everything? Do they have total control over how this meeting is presented and managed? Or if so, then this is totally moot because they'll do what they're going to do. But we have some good ideas, and it would be nice if they heard them.
Well, I think the timing is kind of terrible. In that the agenda has been set. A lot of the talking will be done by the city. The majority of the CAC presentation will be done by Kate. I don't know how to bring folks together and try to change that process at this point in time.
Okay.
Okay.
They probably already met and decided how they were going to do it.
Right. Maybe what we can do is, for future reference, capture some of these main points in a memo to the city planning, the city staff people who do these meetings, and make suggestions.
At the planning commission last night, it was suggested, and I've suggested as well earlier, that there should be a lessons learned document. Because theoretically, this is the first neighborhood plan of several neighborhood plans that will go around, unless the city decides they don't want to do
That's a
them.
good idea, but that's not what I was saying, John.
Tell me what you were saying.
I was saying that we could make a note from what we know about facilitation and from this conversation, and send it to the staff with suggestions for future meetings.
Not necessarily the plan process.
No,
Okay.
just facilitating big meetings with minute information.
Okay. So can we shift to talk about how we're going to deliberate towards a neighborhood recommendation? Which is the next step in the process?
Can I respond by hands up?
Okay.
I think what Dan said is really helpful. I think it doesn't help to say we had a 3-year hiatus and we missed this and we lost that, or here's the history. It helps, as Beth was saying, to go directly, I think it's page 24, where there's an economic development vision statement. And here's what we need to concentrate on. And we don't need, if you want some more history, read the first 25 pages. But here's where we are. That's what I heard Dan saying. I think it's what you want, John, but you can't give us how hard everybody's been working for a long time and spend a lot of time telling us that. We have to, because I think what we have to figure out is there some way we can get some information from our community that we want to use in evaluating what we think we want to recommend? Or are we just listening to John tell us what he thinks needs to be changed, and when we respond to that?
So I don't know what to do with that for tomorrow's meeting, Brenda. Tell me
I have
what
nothing. I have nothing. I'm not talking about tomorrow's meeting. I didn't even know tomorrow's meeting was on our agenda. I thought we were talking about how we're going to get information from our community.
Okay, well, we've done that as much as we can. Other than telling me that I talk too much, I don't know what you're telling me.
Let me try it again. I think
Please.
Dan's comment about how important it is that the reality is 1.5% a year of growth is happening in our neighborhood. And he had some numbers. It would be helpful if I knew what 80,000 was compared to, but those kind of numbers may help people understand. It doesn't matter if you don't, here's the reality. And that's what this vision is about. I'm beginning to hear you say that. That's what I need to hear if you want me to engage, not the past. And I thought our agenda said, how are we going to set up a meeting to talk about proposing something to the community to get their feedback or to get them to agree with us so that that's what we send to the CAC or whatever the alphabet soup is. Is that not what the agenda says for us tonight?
I think what I intended for this agenda to do was figure out a process whereby we would deliberate towards a recommendation to the CAC for what we like, don't like, what we want changed in the neighborhood plan, and that we would give the neighborhood an opportunity to see that and make any changes they find necessary. Is that clearer?
And so what you want now is a process for how that's going to unfold?
Yes. As it says, determine the process for the board to review the draft neighborhood plan and public feedback and deliberate to a recommendation to the CAC. We also need to determine how to include our membership in the process.
So I'm thinking that the CAC guys should have a list, it's probably going to be a long list of motions for the points of the plan, and we just go through and pass the motion or not, and do it pretty rapidly. And the ones that we don't pass, then we have to have further discussion of.
So tell me how this list of motions is set up.
You have done a plan that has numerous goals and policies and action items, correct?
Yeah.
And that is what we're trying to approve, correct?
I don't, so you're suggesting we go through the plan goal by goal and decide whether it's acceptable or not? I mean,
Well, how
that's the way to go.
else would you do it?
Well, I guess that makes sense. I don't know. It's whether it's 5 years makes a difference or not. It's a huge behemoth of a plan. I have to admit that my perspective is flavored, flawed, whatever, by what I see is wrong with the plan, and I can take you right to those places. But we probably should do it in the structure of goal by goal. You're right. And other people may have other perspectives.
The level of detail we need to go into each goal, it can be determined by your committee, right?
By what committee?
The CAC team that we have.
Board members.
You.
Okay, so you're proposing we get the CAC board members together and propose a mechanism for review.
No, she's proposing that if there are things in this plan that you absolutely think have to be changed, she didn't say it that way, but that's how I will vote. What you have to defend to me why that has to be changed, because this has been in process for a while. And so if it isn't disastrous, I may not want to be tweaking it. But you have to tell me what you think is a red herring or what needs to be changed there. And then we as a board have to defend that to the community. And I don't think we put it out to say, this is what we think, you can change anything you want. We say, this is our recommendation, and here's why. And you probably have no one, you probably have John not speak to that. You have the rest of us speaking to that, because that would mean we understood it. You understand it. And then if I can't defend it for you, then I need to understand it better.
Beth, you want to weigh in here now? As another CAC member?
Yeah, I think the suggestion to really look at the goals, the policies and the action items and figure out how to structure those as opposed to, the entire plan. I think Dan's comments are well to heed in terms of, this is looking to the future. We're trying to plan for a future that makes our neighborhood livable and yet accommodating of the changes that are going to be happening over the next 30 years. And so that framework, I think, is a good way to put it
Right.
as you're looking at each of the goals, the policies, the action items, that we're not talking about tomorrow. We're talking about looking ahead to what things are going to look like in the next 30 years because, or 20 years or whatever, because this is a plan that will be in place. And I think the other thing that's important is that the city really, when I first started hearing about the plan, their comment was, this is going to be a template for the other neighborhood organizations in Eugene.
Mhm.
And so I think it's important for us to keep that in mind, that, it's not just as much as we want to hold on to some of the things about our neighborhood, we really do need to be thinking into the future.
Okay, so
There's two processes. One is for the board,
Right.
right? What I would like to see is that a bunch of motions, maybe 108 or however many points there are in the plan, motions be made and boards, and not a lot of discussion. We've already discussed. We already pretty much know what we want. We're just going to vote yes or vote it up or down. Then, so we have that bulk of it taken care of. Then the ones that are voted down will need more discussion, and maybe we can use those for pointed feedback from the community. But I don't see any other way of doing it. It doesn't need to take a month and a half of deliberation.
theoretically, we don't have the time, but if we need it, we can take it.
John,
So, yes,
how many action items are there in the plan? Do you know approximately?
150.
Okay. So,
Hey, John.
Yeah, Dan.
Something that I brought up last night that I think would be good to do is to collect demographic information from those who attend the meeting tomorrow, so that we can keep some sort of a idea for who's attending, implementing, so
So
that
you're breaking up,
hopefully
Dan.
that the final. Can you hear me? Okay.
No,
He said he wants you to
Hello?
get demographic information so that you know who's been attending the meetings.
Well,
Right.
that would-
We our meetings are, and at least our neighborhood has fairly known demographics, and if we're not hitting certain ones, like whether it be
Renters.
race or renter owner, then that kind of falls back on the city, that when they do their outreach, they need to really focus and drill down on the areas that have not been attending, so that we get a well-balanced review from those demographics.
Having just looked at the survey the city did, I think that's not going to happen.
well, and the input from the public, at least in this iteration, closes on the 5th. And there is a question at the end of the survey that asks people to voluntarily present that information. We can ask that question tomorrow and ask people to raise hands, but I'm not sure what this one meeting's demographics means for the involvement over the past 5 years, Dan.
I don't either. Again, it's one of those things where what I fear is that we'll get to the end of this thing, and people will say, well, it's not reflective of the community because it was all homeowners, and 40% of our neighborhood is renters, or
Well,
that
that's
it was
true.
all folks who
And-
are white and are with 13% of the population that isn't.
So
in
I'm
River
going to
Road.
focus on what our task is here right now. What does that mean to our deliberation towards making a recommendation?
Well, I think he's partly talking to how are we representing the community, or are we representing those who show up at our meetings?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that if tomorrow's meeting is a microcosm of the past 5 years meeting, then we can use that as a demographic to say to the city in our recommendation to them, in just this one meeting, we did a short poll, and the statistics are wildly different than the known demographics that we have for the city and in these specific areas. And so we are charging you to, in your own outreach that they're planning to do, to really drill down on not just their known ways of outreach to the neighborhood, but outside the box ways of reaching out to the neighborhood, whatever those are. And if that means including us, then that's fine. We have that conversation. But just doing what you always did gets you what you always got. So that's what I fear.
That
Well,
was my summary of the survey that they sent out. And, I think the best thing we can do is put a caveat on our proposal and say, this does not represent the whole community. And it doesn't represent 90% of the renters or something like that.
Well, and unless we do something such that they did with House Bill 2001 and bring together a citizen jury, I don't know how else to do it. But the reality, Dan, is that once the CAC makes a recommendation to the Planning Commission, as far as I know, the Planning Commission is going to have a public hearing, and that's going to be the outreach. Then it will go to the City Council and the County Commission. They will have a public hearing, and that will be their outreach. So unless we're going to recommend that process changes, I don't see a place for what you're recommending.
Well, it was my understanding that we were going to have, even outreach, for example, could be that when they send notices of public comment, that they're letting organizations, civic organizations, outreach groups, community organization groups know that this event is occurring, and they target specific areas. For example, I'm just going to use Renner because it's the easiest one, but low-hanging fruit. But if we're going to have a public hearing on this, and we're looking around the room and saying, gosh, there's only about 10% of renters here, and that's 30% lower than the average, then the city's job is to make sure that they hold an informational over Echo and over at River Road across the street from Dairy Mart and down the street
Right.
at that apartment complex. So that
But
they said, yes,
Dan,
we
I'm
checked that
going to
box.
interrupt you here. I'm sorry. We're getting way behind in our agenda. That's a systemic problem for the city. That does not influence or affect how we decide how we're going to deliberate towards a recommendation. That's a huge issue, and it's an issue for every part of government, including neighborhood associations. But that's not on the agenda.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it shouldn't be. But if we
No, I
want
hear you. That's fine.
So-
I will tell you that when they did the notification of this public involvement process, they targeted several groups and sent information out to the Home Renters Association, to the Home Builders Association, to the NAACP, to the Hispanic groups, etc. And we get what we get.
They did hire a consultant to reach out to underrepresented groups.
Right.
Earlier on in the process.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did. Julie used to do it. Yeah.
And there is some information at the beginning of that, but I don't know how much is happening now. Can we get back to the issue at hand though? We
Well,
need
I
to-
made a proposal and I haven't heard any response to that proposal.
Yeah, I hear you and I appreciate that. So what I think I heard you say, Claire, is that we try to review the draft plan and the action items in the structure of the way that they're presented. And that we either say, we like the way that goal 1 was handled and we recommend approval, or we have issues with goal 1 and these are what they are. And either we recommend that part not be approved or we recommend changes. Does that accurately represent what you're proposing?
Well, you made it a little bit more complicated. What I was saying is that I make a motion that goal 1, action item number 2, which is blah, 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 be approved, period. Yay or nay?
With or without discussion.
Then if everybody says yes, we approve it, then we don't have to have discussion. If there is discussion, we can set it aside for another round of the discussion. What I'm trying to do is get through a large batch of material so that we can focus in on where there is more discussion and work needed.
Okay,
Claire,
well,
what if the motion was they only bring things that they think need to be changed? Gosh, I hope we aren't trying to rewrite this thing at this point. It's, Beth and John and
Yeah,
Sue have been working on this for a long time. I'm looking at the document as we were talking about it, and it's like there's a goal for economic development, and then there are 4 points under the first one. And
right.
yeah.
and I don't see 155 points, but maybe something's hidden. This is what I, as a reader, I, as a community member, I'm going to be looking at if you're asking me, do you agree with this or not? That's what I think we need to be focusing on. And only if there's something that's really a red flag, do I want you to bring it forward.
Well, I was just proposing in the board meeting, not a general meeting, to sift through it all rather than rely on one or three people to identify the ones we need to talk. So if you're suggesting that we don't all need to vote on it, then I'm okay with that too.
I'm suggesting that they're the experts that have been working on this, and I can read transportation. That seems like all of those seem like good goals to me, and I don't have any reason to think any of them are a problem.
Okay.
But if John and I'm sure John thinks there's a lot of problems, and I think probably some of those problems are not needing to be addressed. But we have to have the conversation about what he thinks is a problem, but not all the ones that are okay.
Does that work for you, Claire, that we basically give excuse me, Dan, that basically we give everybody an opportunity to bring their issues to the table, that we structure them around the goals, et cetera, of the plan. So we take them in a logical order, but otherwise, rather than say yes to everything that we're comfortable with, we focus on those things that we're not comfortable with. And I certainly hope there's more than John with a list.
Well, I'm hoping that the three of you that have been working on it bring us that list. That if the other two people that have been working on this with you don't find what you think is a problem, then you let go of that. And for this particular moment, we don't deal with everything you have, but on something that Beth, John, and Susan have agreed upon. And if it's too hard for the three of you to work with together, then maybe I just walked into it.
Well, so what I'm hearing, I'm trying to summarize what I'm hearing. Claire's proposal is go by goal, hopefully not all the way down to policy, because we're back at 150 again. The other 150, Brenda, that I had mentioned early are action items for discussion. And I hope we don't spend a whole lot of time going through the action item list, because that's I've said more than once, that's a someday maybe never list that will be modified in the future and really doesn't have a whole lot of implication. The council's not going to approve it. They may acknowledge it. The real issues here are embedded in the plan.
Well, I don't see anything that says action items. I see lots of policies under goals, but I don't see.
There's a separate document called action items that has 150 in them. And they're also organized around the goals and policies. But that's a separate document. Anyhow, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess just a procedural question. So who and when will be voting on this document? It's going to be SACO and RRCO, right? Have we determined what the rules are for that
then CAC
process?
That's what we're trying to do right now, Dan.
Right, but I mean, have we determined? I guess what I'm saying is, have we determined? So there's no framework at this point. We can create whatever rules we want. If that's the case, I'm with Brenda. My thought is, this is the 95-yard line. This is the document that's been created. If someone in the body wants to raise their hand and say, I don't like items 1.4, then you need a certain threshold of people to agree with you to bring that up for discussion. Otherwise, it's going through. And maybe that's 2/3.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's-
It can't just be one person saying, I don't like 1.2, because we'll never get out of that meeting. This is why things can't be done by committee. You know, I mean, at some point, someone's got to govern. So this is the document that the chosen representatives who have worked on this for 5 years have created in consultation with the city, for better or worse. This is what it is. If there's some overarching thing that the body just does not like, and they've got the votes to be able to do it, then let's bring it up for a discussion and vote that up or down. But we don't have the ability to do 150 votes or 150 minutes of discussion, or that's just chaos.
So the framework of what I've heard so far proposed, sorry, Claire, it sounds like we're not going to have 150 votes. And maybe that's not what you recommended.
That's
But that we asked the 3 people who were CAC reps and anybody else who I guess what I'm hearing is the rest of you don't feel you have enough knowledge to make a recommendation of what does and doesn't work. And I accept that, but I don't want to preclude your ability to bring it up. But that the 3 of us who are CAC members have an opportunity to try to put together a list of issues that we feel are significant enough for the board to consider and discuss and deliberate towards whether we have an issue with those or not. Is that where we're at? Brenda, is that
You're close. I think I don't want to know what you have issues with. I want to know what you want done with it. If you
that's also a good
goal
point.
number 1 is, I don't want to hear, if goal number 1 says improve the neighborhood economy and empower local residents by encouraging growth and creation of local businesses, policy 1.2 neighborhood assets, support business development that utilizes neighborhood assets. You don't want that. You want it to say something else. I want a motion that says we suggest replacing this and why. And that's what you bring to the board.
Okay, that's a good point.
Not the beginning of a discussion, but the fix to it. And
so what does or doesn't, what doesn't work, and what would you like to see as a difference?
yeah,
But again, there needs to be a threshold on what qualifies, because otherwise we could have everybody's got their opinions on Scribner's errors or things that they want changed. There has to be, at this time, it's if you want this out of here, if I want what Brenda just said out and I don't like it in there, it's my job to go lobby 5 or 6 other community members to say we all agree that this should not be in there.
well,
And if you can't get that,
this is
tough
just
beans.
the board at this point.
It's the board.
Sure,
Yeah.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
still, I mean, it means that then it's our job as a board to say, I go get Susan to go along with me or whatever. If you can't get another person to go along with it, it can't just be all of us individually. I mean, it'll take hours and hours and hours. There needs to be some higher threshold at this point.
We've get it, Daniel. You've said it about 5 times. I think we get it.
Dan, what
Okay.
may help you is that I'm probably the person who is least pleased with the draft plan. I don't have more than 3 or 4 items other than the process to bring to the table. I think it's not going to be that long a discussion. Should the city have a committee to look at how we deal with parking in the neighborhood when we don't have any way to enforce it? Period. Those are the kinds of things I'm coming with.
I want to know what Michelle's hand is about.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Well,
Michelle.
I guess to kind of sum it up, what I hear you all saying is, let's deal with the exceptions rather than the whole thing all at once. So let's pull out those things that, are exceptions. So I'm kind of hearing some good stuff from both of you. I'm trying to distill it in. And I agree with Dan that there should be, people shouldn't be able to bring their personal agenda over one specific action item. Maybe it should be a majority of the board or whatever, once those exceptions are pulled out and there's a discussion about how to work through them. But I'm with John that it's been a couple of years, it's been 3 years, 3.5 years since I did this. And I'm pretty satisfied. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. And there's only a few things that might be like the parking issue and things like that. So that's my take on it, is that let's look at the exceptions of it. Maybe those of us in the board, the CAC works it, then the board comes up with a recommendation. Yeah, we'll recommend the plan, but we want these things. It would be better if it was clarified or something. I don't know. That's kind of where I was going, that's what I heard y'all say.
Okay,
right.
so let me say it again. The three of us who were CAC members will get together. We'll come up with a list of things to present to you as concerns that we have. Anybody else who has any that they want to bring to the table, I think they should have the right to do it as well. We'll have a short presentation of what each of those items is in turn. We'll have a short discussion, and at some point in that process, fairly early on, we'll do some sort of an assessment as to whether this is worth discussing further or do we drop it. And I think if we go through that process, it'll be relatively quick, and we can deliberate towards a decision.
John, the piece you missed in what you just described is if you have a concern about the parking,
Yes.
for example, just to use that
What's your
concretely,
proposal to fix it?
what
Yeah.
is it that you are replacing it with, or you want it out of there, or you want to replace it with this? And then I
Good
want to
point.
have a discussion on what you're proposing. So we're
Okay.
not discussing the issue, we're talking about the change.
Agreed.
Okay.
So basically, how do you fix it?
Yeah, either fix it,
Right.
delete it,
Or drop it.
or
Yeah. Or
we
add
don't
something
touch
new.
it. Thank you.
Okay.
So I
Do we have consensus
think so.
to a process?
And we have it in the
Everybody-
minutes because she clarified it.
Good,
Good, Michelle.
That's why I did it.
Okay. So without objection, that's how we'll do it. Now, the other challenging piece is, when are we going to do this? When is there a time when we can, at least all of us ideally, if not the vast majority of us, could come together for a meeting between, now that I fixed it, June 20th and before July 10th? Did you guys bring your calendars?
Yes.
Yes, we are online. Our calendar goes online with us wherever we go.
Okay. Let me get my calendar up.
Well, the 12th is our next meeting, so you don't want to make
Clearly,
are we
Yeah.
trying to get this ready for the board, for the community by June 12th or by July the 10th?
July the 10th.
So then why do we need to do this earlier than the next board meeting?
Oh, I think that would be pushing it too close to the meeting.
Yeah, I agree. Our next board meeting is,
Is the,
30 is the 24th.
yeah,
Wait a minute, I'm in the wrong month. 28th, 2 weeks before. It's 2 weeks before the next general meeting.
The 28th.
yeah, and we need to put our reports together, et cetera, to take to the membership. So I don't think we're going to see any results before the 20th. That's the challenge. We have a short window here.
What kind of results are you expecting to get that you can't do your work without it, John?
The summary of the feedback that the surveys have gotten from the city.
Do you think the city's going to change the plan because of those?
No, but we will
they're
know what
informing
people
us.
think.
The survey is of the community and they're informing us of what the community has said on the survey.
What they like and what they don't like, what they would propose changing, what they would propose dropping, I hope.
So that'll inform what you're bringing, not just the 3 things that you're planning to bring.
Well, maybe, or you will look at that and use that information to inform how you feel about the issues. But it may well be that someone will raise an issue from the public that we hadn't thought about that we will have to consider. That's a possibility. So maybe we should leave a little bit of time for the 3 CAC members to look at that information as well.
So if you met with, if our regular board meeting is the 28th, that's only a week after that comes out. I'm just looking at a calendar and saying what I'm looking at.
Well, we
So
Our
if you
meeting's
don't,
the 26th, yeah. That's July, sorry, June.
June 20th is a Tuesday.
So you don't
Right.
think that a week is enough time to review what the city sends to us?
I think
It's not, it's not going to be a lot of data. They don't have very many respondents yet.
So far.
It
Our
probably gets
board
more
meeting
out
is
of
on the
it.
28th.
Right.
so. What do you propose, John?
Well, thinking about the fact that we now have a three of us committee meeting prior to that, if we do indeed get the feedback from on the 20th from the city, and we have a board meeting on the 28th, I mean, we could, since we all have agreed that we can meet on the 28th, we can make the 28th board meeting our deliberation and nothing else. That's one possibility. And that gives us enough time, theoretically at least, for the CAC committee members to come together and make a proposal to get to you ideally by Monday of before the 26th, before the 28th, so you can see what we're talking about. It's tight.
If you're not expecting much from the city anyway, why don't you just go ahead and meet like next week or the 6th of June and do our work with our stuff? You'll be on the same page, we'll be on the same page, and dealing with whatever the city throws from their feedback will be easy because we've already done the big stuff.
Yeah, it could just be an addendum.
You could do the city stuff at the 28th and still do regular board meeting stuff. If we had a meeting earlier where you did the CACs, your report to us, our dealing with the big document. And I don't think that we ought to spend more than about an hour doing that, because I don't think if you guys are bringing what you're bringing, it's not that hard.
Given how we're doing tonight, I'm not so sure. So let me ask this question specifically right now. Do we want to use the all or some of the board meeting on the 28th to do this deliberation? What do
Only
people think about that?
Only a small part, the city.
I would support that.
I like that idea.
Dan,
I don't have anything. I'm happy with what we come up with.
okay. Claire, I didn't quite capture whether you're good with it. Okay,
That was a thumb.
so as soon as we can, we'll try to get together a meeting of the three of us who were CAC reps. And get together a recommendation to you guys about issues that are worth considering, because either we think that there are changes that need to be made, things need to be dropped, and in that also what suggestion we make about how to make it better. Am I to assume that none of the rest of you will have recommendations, or shall you bring them to the meeting on the 28th?
No, don't bring them to the meeting on the 28th. That's
So how do we
confirmation of
incorporate
what you
what other
have.
people think?
Well, they know who you are.
Okay, so we will give folks a deadline for you to get your concerns to the three of us, and we will incorporate them in our discussion.
And then are you going to present those to us before the 28th?
Yes,
So are we going to have a voting time before the 28th meeting? So we're just dealing with the city stuff on the 28th? Or are you now putting all of that into the meeting on the 28th?
I assumed it would all be on the 28th.
Right.
Okay, well, I can live with that. I think that means, John, they'll be succinct. Okay.
I heard that, Brenda. Hopefully a committee will keep me in check. Yes.
Well, it means that the work will have been done. We won't be having discussion about issues.
Right.
or process.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Good.
can we make that a motion so that we actually have a recorded decision? And Dan, can you chair so I can make a motion?
Sure.
Okay. In hoping of capturing what we have agreed to, I move that the 3 CAC members who are also board members meet as early as possible in order to develop a list of issues that we feel the board should discuss, because we think they should either be taken or modified, taken off the plan or modified in some way with recommendations of what those modifications should be, and present those in a document that we will then send in advance to the board prior to their meeting on the 28th so that they can deliberate on our recommendations. Anything else I should add?
That's very succinct, John.
I can do it.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Okay, Brenda seconds the motion. I'm assuming we're not going to have any discussion on the motion, and I can't see everyone, so I'm going to, if we could do the hitting your raised hand, that way I'll know it. All those in favor signify by raising your hand virtually.
Physical or electronic?
Electronic. I can't see you.
Okay.
I can't find my hand, but I'm an I, Dan.
All right, that works. That works.
Well,
Looks
other
like
than, well, there we go. They're all there.
there we go. So the motion is unanimous. John, it's back to you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's see, where are we in the agenda other than late? Given the agenda and the time, improving the hybrid meeting process, I propose we bring together the people who have worked on hybrid meeting, that we revise our process using the OWL and hopefully have something in place for our June meeting. Any further discussion necessary?
When is our deadline to be in place?
At least 3 days in advance.
But I mean, are we going to go to hybrid meeting the next meeting? Because we have all these other things going on.
I'd like to. Do you think that's problematic?
No, I just didn't know if it was going to be like the last meeting.
I.e. no hybrid?
Right.
I think our commitment is to go back to hybrid.
Okay, fine.
Depends on whether we can pull it off or not. The problem is you want to get a newsletter out on the weekend and we need to know. I don't know. I think we have to make a decision and see how it works.
There's Brenda.
Brenda? You're muted,
Muted.
Brenda.
I wrote out a proposal that we do an in-person meeting only until we have the resources available to do a hybrid meeting well. That includes the equipment and the people, which we currently do not have in place.
That's true.
I second that motion.
Okay. But in the meanwhile, we should work to making sure that happens, or we'll be back in the same place next month.
Yeah.
Well, we continue doing in-person meetings until we have those pieces in place. And we told the community that was true before we started it.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Oh, you just did. I'm sorry, Claire.
Claire did.
Any discussion? Okay, everybody raise your hand again if you support the motion.
Or
Aye.
speak if you're
Aye.
Dan. That's it.
Okay, there we
That was
are.
easy.
Thank you. I move we extend the agenda 20 minutes to get through it. Yes, I can't make that motion. Would someone like to make a motion to extend the meeting?
I move that we extend the meeting.
How long?
20 minutes is fine.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hands again.
Aye.
Any objections? Okay, we have 20 minutes. We have two items left on the agenda, essentially. One is to decide if we want to try to find a way to spend what we have remaining in our budget. The other is setting an agenda for the June meeting.
What
So-
about number 5?
Yeah, the summer event.
Oh, sorry.
Can you let
I
Claire
jumped
talk
over
a bit?
that.
Thank you.
Summer event, is that what we're talking about?
Yes,
Okay. I want to propose, and I haven't checked this out with the city or not, that we have it in September instead of August. Because more people will be in town and it will be cooler. Does anybody think that's a bad idea?
The 16th of September is a bunch of pre-Fontaine racing events.
Okay, well, obviously have to be around that, probably before that, the week before it. Okay, but we have to look into what's the conflicts.
so you said sometime in September.
Yeah. I think
think
earlier
that's
rather than
great.
later would be better. So we don't have to decide that here. I just want to know if anybody has an objection to me making that change.
So you'll just do sort of a save the date, but it's moving kind of announcement in the newsletter.
Yeah,
So it's still happening, but we've moved it to September date to be blah, blah, blah. It sounds great.
right. If I get that okay from the city. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is, this has to do with the budget. We need to have a budget for flyers and other kinds of materials. And I'm not sure how to go about that, who needs it by when, and what the limits are. Specific question, can we pay someone to do a graphic?
I don't know that specifically, but it's certainly something we can find out in enough time to either do it or not do it.
Okay, so, in terms of the budget and when we need to pay to spend our money, what are the?
That's in the next fiscal year.
Okay, so it's not urgent. Okay.
No, July 1 will be the start of the next fiscal year.
Okay, very good. And the other thing is that I don't have a real good working committee yet. Thank you for your suggestions, Brenda. We can still work on getting that together. That's one reason to postpone it a little bit. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, and let's hopefully have more of a discussion about how we can widen the audience, but we don't need to do that tonight either.
I did reach out to Ann Christensen, who's the faculty advisor at North High for the affinity groups, and ask her if there would be activities that the students would enjoy or like to lead.
Yeah.
So,
Another good reason to move to September.
yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the current budget. To summarize one more time, we have about $8,000 in our account, but that is somewhat limited because the city says we have to match city and county funding. And even though we have more county funding than we have city, basically we have about $5,000, 4,490 available yet to spend. We need to get that done by the middle of June in order to get the paperwork done through the city. We can let it lie fallow and the city portion will go away, but it is an opportunity to spend some money for a good purpose, assumedly. And the things that I came up with as potential things is we could send out a postcard if we wanted. It seems premature to announce a September event, and I'm not sure what else we would put in that postcard other than to invite people to attend our meetings. And it would require someone to put the postcard together. We have had produced lawn signs in the past. If we wanted to get another 100 lawn signs to distribute and not charge people, we could spend about $900 to get 100 lawn signs and make those available in the future. We've talked in the past about buying a canopy. Quick discussion about, do we want to try to spend this money before it goes away?
I think the yard signs would be a really good idea, and then you could have those yard signs with you. Oh, it's already over. You already had the library event, right?
No, that's
No.
June 24th.
Okay, so that we have those lawn signs available to people that come who could prove to us they live in our neighborhood. I
Okay,
mean, not just everybody should get one, but the library should have one.
there you go.
So I
So,
move that we buy 100 more yard signs.
okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, any discussion on that expenditure?
The only discussion I have is that I would like to change the wording to say, instead of building community, that we're growing community.
Okay, I think Cameron has the design. We can check with him and see how difficult that would be to change. But if feasible, let's make that happen. Is that okay?
Yep.
We like trees more than houses.
Wait
Okay,
a
that's
minute.
good.
There's this plan behind here about 1.5% people building and coming to our neighborhood. So you might like trees, but you also live in a house.
Oh, I know. That was facetious.
Okay, let's have a vote. All those in favor of expending money to buy 100 line signs, please indicate by vote.
All right.
Okay, and I hear nobody objecting.
Yes, but we all said aye.
Yep, so that passes unanimously. Did you get the maker and the seconder, Michelle?
Yep.
Okay. Let's talk about postcard. Is it feasible? And if it is, what would we put on it?
How about a save the date can you do a save the date for the September event? Or is it too quick?
Well, I was thinking we would want to do a postcard like 2 weeks before the event, which would
We
be
still
the end
could
of
do.
August.
But in next fiscal year.
And it'll be really close to when, I don't remember when the new second newsletter's coming out. But I
Right.
think that's about the time the newsletter comes out and the recycle. We have to be sure we don't double on top of that when we move to the fall.
So those are all suggestions for next fiscal year. What about this fiscal year?
I don't think a postcard is necessary.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough going on.
Can we
Okay.
buy a canopy? Do we want
Yeah,
to?
well, let's finish the postcard. I will point out that technically we will not be an active neighborhood because we didn't publish 2 publications, but I'm not worried about it.
Okay, good.
We
Okay,
published 10 publications, just not on paper.
I know, but that's not their rule. Which hopefully we can change. A
You have 10 minutes.
canopy, in the past, when we needed a canopy, we borrowed from someone who may or may not have it available. It'd be nice if we had our own. We're probably talking about $100 or less.
Buy it. Isn't it approved expense?
That's what I was gonna say.
Huh?
That's a good question.
I thought we had already proposed that and been turned down once.
Oh, you're right. Damn it.
And
I
Do you have-
completely forgot that.
So, John,
Is
don't
it damn it because she's right or because you proposed it in the past?
Because I had forgotten that we had proposed it and because they said no, both of those.
John,
Yes,
you're technically a grantee, and you have a right as a grantee to know what the allowable expenses are. And so, have they not provided you of what that is?
they have, and it's on they're afraid that we will somehow personally benefit from having a canopy in someone's yard or in their garage. I don't understand it, but that's been their rule.
Odd.
It
And
does,
the other
it
part
does
of
make
it,
sense to me.
it's more credible, is that they already have 3 canopies and we just need to check them out, but it's a pain in the butt.
Do we have a banner, John?
We do.
Okay,
we have several banners, yeah.
okay. Been there,
two of
made
which I
those.
know where they are.
Do we have a booth
A booth, as
Yeah,
in
that you?
a table?
Yeah, a table that, with all the skirting. I mean, I get the canopy thing that the city has ones you can check out, but I guess that's the same with the booth. But I mean, if we're gonna have an event down at the river, you certainly want to have a presence there.
Yeah, I don't know whether they have tables available or not, but I suspect that they do. And if not, I'll try.
Do you have a way to connect with the other community organizations? Well, you do with the neighborhood
There is
organization.
an NLC mailing list.
Can you send out something to them about what they've used money for, just to get an idea that's been okayed in the past?
So how did they spend their money?
Yeah.
As
They
for
have,
ideas?
one of them got vests that people use when they do volunteer work. We can have vests because they're
That's a
not
good-
owned by individuals.
Why are we feeling like we have to spend this money? Do we we're afraid we'll lose it if we don't spend it? I'm just asking the question. I've been
Understood.
boards before with, I didn't
Yep.
spend the money, I lost it,
Yep.
which is such a ridiculous thing.
Well, to answer your question, the city does have an allocation process, which we're hopefully trying to change. But if you don't spend your allocation by the end of the fiscal year, it goes back into the general fund.
Okay, fine.
Number one. Number two, because we haven't mailed to publications, we will technically not be an active neighborhood. Number three is that because we won't be spending our money, and we haven't always spent our money in the past for even more reasons than currently, that is why there is money left in the budget at the end of the year, which the city is saying, obviously you don't need so much because you're not spending it. And that's a logical reason to reduce our allocation. So those are the things I can think of, Brenda, as to why we want to spend it, other than it's an opportunity lost. But I'll take responsibility for not getting this to us early enough.
Well, I just don't think we do live in the city. City is short on money. I don't want to waste this money just to spend it so that we don't lose it. I just sort of have a
Okay,
ethical problem with trying to come up with how to spend it all. And yeah, we didn't put out 2 newsletters in the right amount of time. We put one out in the fall and one in the spring, but that didn't
Okay.
seem to count.
And you should be grateful that we didn't.
Yeah.
Actually, we only published printed one total. Okay, I
John, can
hear. Yeah, Dan.
Couple suggestions. I'm sure one of them is not possible, but we'll go with that one first. Is it possible to start a scholarship that RRCO could give out to students or books for kids during the summer for reading programs, or the library's budget's about to be cut pretty dramatically. So having some sort of connection to local schools, that also helps build community, and it also helps get our name out there for maybe some parents and their local PTAs want to join us and help us. I don't know if that's possible, but the other item that I know that we've always had on our list is turning us into a nonprofit. That's going to take lawyer fees and processing and paperwork and that kind of stuff.
I will ask both those I'll be happy to ask both of those of Cindy and see what response we get.
I think the Social Justice Committee should buy a whole bunch of banned books and make sure they're in the library. Yes.
Well, the social justice team would love to bring, I can't think of his name, but the anthropology professor that
Oh, yeah.
the Native American in University of Oregon State, bring him as a guest speaker and paying him an honorarium. But I think this money can't be used for honorariums.
Typically, that's the case with grant money.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
why I used to be.
Any other thoughts? I will take yours, Dan. And I'll include buying books for the library.
I don't know if that's a real one, John. We could,
Well, I
Well,
think the only way we could justify it is if we had some sort of a book plate in it saying
saying who we are.
donated,
Yeah,
then it's outreach.
yeah.
My suggestion, I mean, and that's to find newer suggestion. Mine was specific to the kids in different schools to reach out to while they're still here before they go on break. Are there supplies or maybe reading programs over the summer, which I know that they are having, where they're in short supply, and help supply them with books or pencils or whatever it is that they need for students in need in our community, and also doing that as kind of maybe a pre-package. We can get that together now for back to school. So back to school little kits for first-time kindergartners and first-time sixth graders and so on and so forth.
The challenge, Dan, is to explain how that is outreach. It's good to do, but how is it outreach?
Well, I would
Like,
argue that it's
My
built
point
in,
about
built
the
community.
book
And
plate.
yeah, I mean,
Pardon?
my argument would be that if the more we're interacting with new people, new groups that we're not touching right now, there's a percentage of those folks who are going to be interested in, well, hey, well, what's RRCO? That sounds interesting. I'll show up to that and then find out what the local community is, and it breeds from there.
Well, unless the pencils were imprinted with "brought to you by RRCO," it's not going
Bingo.
to be outreach.
Bingo.
Yeah. If we, it sounds like we could pitch it as a really good idea to reach the people who the city hasn't been able to reach. And we have
Agreed. So we've got some ideas here. We got some agreement. So I'll follow up on buying a table, buying books for the library, scholarships, starting nonprofit, and see where we get with those. And I'll let you know within the next few days, because we'll need an e-vote if we do it. Okay?
Okay,
Thank you. Good.
Okay, set an agenda for our next meeting, our next general meeting. I threw some things out there we've discussed. They're all inviting people to come talk. And I'm sure you guys have more ideas about some kind of interactive event, I hope. But I mentioned the possibility of inviting Commissioner Senega again, bringing LTE General Manager Otten. We've never had our eWeb commissioner, who's also the eWeb board president, Sonia Carlson, here. There are going to be some increases to your eWeb bills to have been to do Mackenzie River restoration, and there's also going to be an increase to put a secondary source in that might be of interest to neighbors. So what other thoughts do you have?
well, pick one for the next meeting and have half the meeting, or pick two and have, what do we have? And have 30 minutes worth of interaction.
Okay, and who will do that interaction? Who will plan that interaction?
Claire and I.
Okay, so proposal of having two of these people come speak and having 30 minutes of an interactive event. How does that
Let's
sound,
see what-
folks?
Date it is.
I think probably the most relevant speaker people have most interest in is LTD.
Okay,
Little controversy.
well, if he, and I suspect he has some thoughts about what he's gonna do with moving ahead. That certainly would draw people in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them, actually.
Well, I mean, they are our neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it became pretty obvious to me that people do need to have an outlet to be able to ask questions
Yeah.
about the decision-making process.
Yeah.
So,
And the whole problem of too much communication of how many different projects and everything, he can clarify that stuff.
And so who is this? The transportation person?
Yeah.
LTD general manager.
And who's the
So-
other person that that's coming?
Say again,
It's
Brenda?
half an hour is a lot of time.
He's a very
I
good
don't think it would be
speaker.
on this issue.
He's a good speaker. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Beth?
I've heard him speak, and he came to City Club, and
Club,
he's a
yeah.
very good speaker.
So
he
45
can
minutes
also-
might be fine.
Pardon?
Let him have longer time might be good, Beth?
I've not seen, I've only seen him in that one venue and I was quite impressed. I don't know, John, you may know him.
Organized the meeting, yes. I got him to City Club.
Right, but in terms of, does he need more than a half an hour or 45 minutes, or I can't answer that.
Yeah, I would think half an hour would be sufficient, and more would be challenging, and it could open us up to, God damn it, why are you doing that?
Well,
So,
that's part of what we're supposed to be allowing. Now,
but I don't want to spend 30 minutes on it after a 15-minute presentation. I think 30 minutes is sufficient.
A 30-minute presentation, and then people can have those, maybe we would have a breakout session for people to vent however they want to vent about transportation, and each group gets to ask one question or something
That's a
like
thought.
that.
back with him so that the
Yeah, back with
interaction
him.
is around the topic.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
we talk to him ahead of time. You send him to Claire and we can work with him about how to do some interact. Maybe he does some presentation and we break out and come back together and
yeah.
break out again.
Okay.
And that's
well,
that's a format that City Club has used. Where tables will come up with a question for someone.
Right.
So I think that's probably a good use of time.
Okay. I'll ask him how much time he wants, and then we'll give whatever time it needs to do that process. How's that?
Fine.
Well,
Part
We
of what
will-
we're saying, John, is that we'd like him to be there the whole time and that he do some presentation and.
Got it, Brenda.
Okay.
And the subject matter we would like him to speak to is future planning for LTD with specific discussion about and moving ahead. Okay,
Okay, what
Sounds-
is moving ahead again?
moving ahead is MX on River Road.
Okay, I get them all confused. Okay.
Can I just offer a difference? Here? I'm open. I don't know. EMX
Dan.
there's no way that the EMX is going to bring out a constructive, high point, lofty, calm discussion in this community. If we put out that we're having somebody from LTD, we're talking about EMX, the same folks from this both sides are going to show up. It's going to be a screaming match. And RRCO should be about bringing the community together, not tearing it apart. And I feel like, and this is my view, that if LTD wants to hold a meeting, that's on LTD's job. And that and there's no new information to do anyway. It's not like they have anything that's changed in the past year. They're going to come with it. We're just like having a rumble in the jungle just to have a rumble in the jungle. And my view is there are plenty of other topics that are impacting this community, and we could pick one that doesn't tear each other apart just to have a Jerry Springer episode down at the community center.
So
Well, I
give us
think
a
it's
quick
up to us to make sure
suggestion,
that
John.
doesn't happen.
But it
and I
will.
do-
Charlie Rojas will show up, and I mean, that's just going to happen.
Do you, Brenda and Claire, as our interaction people, do you think we could design a session that would not end up being as Dan Spears?
No, I think Dan's got a very good point. If there's no real new information, if nothing's changing, I'd like to hear what Dan suggests as another, as he's been listening to the community, another good topic.
Well, let's not leave this one until we finished it. I suspect, I don't know with certainty, that Jameson does have a new proposal of what to do about moving ahead. He said he's been thinking about it. If he doesn't have something to present, maybe we don't invite him. But if he does, it would be good to hear it and let him get the feedback.
Okay. I hear nobody objects.
Who said that? Was that you, Dan?
Muted.
Nope.
I've got two things going here. My
Oh, okay. Sorry.
computer died, and so I
All right.
pulled you up on my
So,
iPad.
In
So-
response to Dan's consideration, part of me feels like having a big fight, or if you want to characterize it that way, having a dramatic discussion, whatever, is part of the work of a neighborhood association, that we can't shy away from having disagreements and having multiple stuff, just because some people don't know how to do that politely. So, you know, I'm kind of leaning towards wanting to try it again and do it with some ground rules and do it as an opportunity, because people said they're not getting enough information from LTD. They don't understand what's going on. And we had this whole initiative to find out what information they weren't getting. Well, wouldn't this be a way to make that happen?
That could be the, yeah, and I proposed that and I let it drop because there wasn't a whole lot of interest. But I think this could be an opportunity for folks to generate that unanswered question list. And that might be a better way to frame a discussion rather than I don't like MX. If the question is, what information was lacking the last time we did this that you want to be part of the discussion, that becomes a positive thing rather than a negative thing. And I like that idea.
Well, mind you, a lot of people think we're just apologists for MX.
And this would put us in a different place. The big question is whether Jameson's ready to come and do this.
Yeah.
But I think I would be comfortable in presenting him with that proposal. We want you to come talk to about where LTD is going with specific emphasis on what you think might be going forward with MX. If you're not ready, then let's not do it. But if you are, then we will make this an opportunity for folks in the community to share with you the information they think they need to give you informed feedback about that proposal, whatever it is.
And I think you could frame it, meet the new person at LTD. You know, because he's new to our community. And like I say, I was quite impressed. I don't know him. I've not talked to him other than listening to him speak at City Club, but I was very impressed with his ability to stand on his own 2 feet. And probably, I don't know, John, you had more interaction with him, and probably in a respectful way deal with some of the concerns.
Yeah, I think so. He's incredibly capable and personable, and I think we could pull this off.
Cool.
So without objection, Dan, are you still adamantly opposed?
No, it's not that I'm never really, married to anything 100%. I'm open to ideas. It's a fear I have, and that if we don't have some pretty hard, fast rules or some way of framing it that says, that we're setting a new path here, and if your goal is just simply to rehash the old stuff
Right.
for the purpose of that, then this is probably not the venue for you. But if you're here to have an open mind and hear what he has to say, then that's healthy too. Yeah.
Okay, well, I will jump on it tomorrow because we need to have this set for this weekend.
He also is the director of transportation all over the city, and I drive a lot of places besides River Road. So he's speaking, we
Sure,
don't have to have a focus on EMX and why it's not working or whatever.
I think we do have to, but I don't think it's the only thing we talk about. I agree.
I mean,
So-
John, one of the things that came up in the transportation discussion was their hub and spoke system and what they might be doing to change bus routes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there are
That would-
opportunities.
There
for
are other things, sure.
Yeah.
So he may or may not be willing to come. What do you think about backfilling with Commissioner Senega and Sonia Carlson? We definitely heard from our membership that they wanted Commissioner Senega to come back.
Mhm.
And again, we'll have to put some structure around that too, so we don't have someone say, I don't agree with your politics, but
So let's plan on that for August.
no, I'm
If-
talking about this month.
Excuse me, let's plan on that for July, unless we need to move it into June. And we have we aren't going to have a long discussion next meeting. We're going to have a lot other stuff on our agenda. Let's go
So-
ahead and make that plan. If we get the guy you want, fine. And we also have the plan then for July already.
But we have an hour and a half and we're assuming that we'll spend no more than 45 minutes with Jameson? You're gonna have another interactive thing as well? Is that part of what we're doing?
My sense is that Jameson was going to do 45 minutes and there'll be interaction with him for the other 45 minutes, and that will be the topic of the month.
I really doubt that would take that long. I was thinking
Right.
half an hour at most for Jameson to talk, maybe as little as 15 to 20 minutes. Then we would have the interaction. That would leave time in the agenda to fill.
No,
what would be
no, no, no.
helpful-
It's half an hour or 20 minutes for him to talk, 20 minutes for people to get into small groups and decide amongst their group what is the main question they want to ask, then reconvene and have the rest of the hour or however much time answering the questions and discussing them.
Okay, is that what you guys want?
Yes.
Okay. And if he doesn't,
Um,
if he says he's not ready,
Dan's hands up.
Dan,
I don't think that's anywhere close to the amount of time you're going to want for that. I mean, I don't even think an hour and a half is to be long. I mean, you're talking about a 30-minute presentation on EMX, followed by
no,
the time
on
it takes.
LTD.
No, on
Well,
LTD.
right, but it's going to be about EMX, right? Let's just be honest. It's going to be about EMX.
Not
So
necessarily, Dan.
Yeah.
For the groups that show up, it's going to be a huge portion of it, right? So then you're going to have to have time to break out into groups, right? That takes time, and then you're going to have the formation of questions. At the end of the day, that's what people want. People are there because they want their questions to be heard. They want to be able to stand up there, say what they want, and get their question answered. That's the whole goal.
Well, hold
right?
on, Dan. The goal is not to have the questions answered. They're to frame the questions so that when LTD comes back, they'll have those questions answered at that time. He's not going to be able to tell you how many parking spaces are going to be taken by MX.
Right, but there's a question and answer proportion to this, correct?
There's a question period, and I guess a response from him about whether those
Right.
are valid questions or not.
So we're going to repeat what we have with Seneca, which is 2 people are going to get a chance to ask a question. Maybe
No,
3.
that's not what I heard Claire propose. We're breaking into groups and those groups will present their questions.
They will come to one question for each group.
And then, I mean, Claire and I haven't talked about this, so we're not on exactly the same page, but people would have a chance to write down their questions, and then
Right.
the group might pick up the most important question, but that doesn't mean the other stuff doesn't get put in the
Move
newsletter or put also.
Yeah, I like that, Brenda.
I think we're being overly optimistic of what the end result's going to be.
So what I
Okay.
hear you saying, Dan, is that we can never have a decent conversation with a speaker because anything would take more than an hour and a half. That doesn't sound right to me.
No.
Well, first of
Claire-
all, let's not make this personal and don't attack me. I don't appreciate it.
I just was speaking to you because I was responding to you. I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying that
I'm setting a boundary. I'm setting a boundary, so please stop. Okay. So what I'm saying is that you're choosing a topic that we have a history in this neighborhood. We have 2 elections about it. That is a hot button. You're going to have those people show up. There's no way you won't. And at the end of the day, the result is going to be 1 or 2 people get to ask a question. It is going to be a repeat of what we've had in the past. That is the likelihood scenario. That is what's happened. I mean, if people view differently, that's fine.
You didn't hear what's proposed. The proposal is that Jameson makes his presentation. We break into groups. Those groups develop their series of questions, and we allow that group, a spokesperson, to present some percentage or one of those questions for Autzen to hear and either respond or not. But we're not having a debate about whether MX is good or bad. We're generating a list of unanswered questions. So when it comes back around the next time, that's not an opportunity for Charlie to have a fit.
I'm just going to withdraw my objection then. I mean, at the end of the day, you have, let's say 40 people show up. We have groups of 5 people. That is 7 or 8 groups of 5 people with individual questions, there's not going to be time for 8 questions at the end, which means you have 8 groups who have a question and 2 of them get to present it. What happens to the other 6 who feel that at the end of the day, we're apologists for BMX, that we just let them do what they want? It feeds this narrative and you're going to piss people off. That's what's going to happen. But it is
Okay,
what it is. I mean,
I hear you, Dan, but I don't agree.
I hear Dan and really want, I wish we were not already fried because we're an hour and 20 minutes over we're 40 minutes over our end time already. But I think Dan has interaction with the community and the way the public is now responding to things, that I'm naive about that. And it isn't a city club, which is, you have some ground rules there. It's different than River Road Community Organization. And would it hurt us to ask the county commission, those other 2 people you had, John, instead of LTD this time? And listen to Dan's wisdom.
What do other people think, Beth?
Yeah, I think either program would be good. I can appreciate, Dan, what you're saying. And it would take a strong person who is helping to facilitate to probably keep it in check. I do think an hour and a half would be ample time. My guess is that he would probably speak for 20 minutes. You'd have 10 to 15 minutes at the most for tables to break down, which would give enough time for each table to ask a question.
And then I think the unknown part that I don't quite know what to do with is, once they ask those questions, which are frankly will assumedly need research and before they can be answered, i.e. they're questions that won't be answered that night. How does that feel?
Why wouldn't I expect the speaker to answer the question I ask him?
Because they're questions like, how many acres are going to be taken up by the MX line in personal property? That's not something you can answer off the top of your head.
Yeah.
Well, and we could take Dan's concerns into consideration and have the other 2 individuals. I think both of them would be interesting topics too.
If we had them first, and I think if we learn to talk to each other, then we can handle the more hot topics. I mean, I think Dan's got some wisdom.
Michelle?
This is a tough one, because I understand the, wanting to let the community have an opportunity to ask questions. It's just that I know how organized these people are and how very passionate they are, but I had to chase them out of here because our HOA doesn't allow people down here to solicit or pass out any kind of political thing. It's like posted as no trespassing. And the guy is really rude, and it's a tough crowd. And so you're going to take the brand new LTD director and throw him to the tough crowd. It's like, I mean, I get Dan's point. I kind of agree. It's a little bit of a scary situation. It could amplify and really get out of control. So I have some concerns about that. But I also want to be able to, let folks have an opportunity, maybe perhaps framing it as that we're going to talk about what LTD is doing going forward. We're not going to talk about this is not a look back situation. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways maybe you could put some guardrails around it to kind of control the discussion, but then you fall into the trap of, we get labeled as being what I forget the term that you used. So I kind of I'm leaning right now a little bit more towards, I'm a PTSD survivor, so I'm all about safety. And I you know, am kind of leaning more towards maybe not, now is not a good time to do it.
Okay, Claire, and then I'll go.
I'm fine with however the consensus is.
Okay. I think this is an issue that we have been claimed to be not cognizant of those people who are opposed to MX, that we in the past have always been supportive because that's who comes to our meetings. I think this is an issue that needs to be discussed. I think we don't have enough time to set it up this month, but I do think we need to make it a topic for future discussions. But I'm willing to wait until we know where Jameson is, whether he has anything significant to present, and how comfortable he is into walking into the lion's den. He's already presented to Santa Clara and he survived. I'll leave it at that. I guess we're going to invite Sonia Carlson and Ryan Senega to come to our meeting.
Okay, can we talk to Santa Clara about how they facilitated it and if they got disruptors?
I think we should do that before we bring it back up again. Yes.
Let's
Hey,
not
did we-
wait to do that till like the next meeting.
Well,
Are we adding
whenever,
Sonia? Sorry, apologies.
go ahead.
I was just wondering if we were adding Sonia for any particular reason, or if it just we needed a second person versus Ryan.
She's our eWeb commissioner, and eWeb has got some major things coming up that I think she'd like
Okay.
to talk to us about.
Cool. I just wasn't sure if there was something new. Okay.
Well, I think the second source is definitely new and we need to hear about it. And they're going to be raising their rates.
She's embedded in this community because she's been a leader in the Kelly YG discussion.
She's been around here for a long time. For
The only time we've had her in the past is in our August meeting when we invite all the electeds and she basically got to say, hi, I'm Sonia.
yeah. And she's come out and done volunteer work with us on the waterfront and stuff like that.
And she's expressed an interest in coming to the meeting. So without objection, we'll make Ryan Senega and Sonia Carlson our invited guests for the June meeting. Thank you for your patience, folks. We got through some really tough stuff tonight. Thank you.
Nice work. See you guys another
Okay.
time, but not later tonight.
Take care, all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good
That's
night.
all the good
Go,
evening.
John.
Save the chat. I guess there wasn't that much chat, was there? Okay.
No, well, let's see. So Claire, how do we save the transcript?
They will send us a link to it. It's already been saved.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Everybody, all three of us.